The hardest thing is getting through the door the first time again. Once they've got through that door, because whatever anxiety or I don't know, like thoughts they've got going through their head, once they've got over that initial step, you get the first session done. Okay, we'll see you next week or see you at the next session.
My guest for this episode is Chris Walsh, co-host of the UK Karate Podcast and a lifelong karateka who began training as a young child under his father. What I enjoy about this conversation is that we didn't just talk about karate techniques. We talked about mentorship, what it means to be guided by an older generation, what younger instructors might be missing today, and how the dojo can shape people beyond the physical training. Chris shared what old school karate was like growing up, what standards are worth preserving, and what parts of the old way needed to be changed. We also talk about teaching today's youth, helping students find confidence, and how karate can give people structure, routine, and purpose when they need it the most. Let's get started. Hello, Chris. Welcome to the Shugyo Podcast.
Hi, Swire. How are you?
I'm doing well, and I'm looking forward to this conversation. And if people are wondering, Chris is the other co-host for UK Karate Podcast. And kudos to Andy Patton, who introduced us for this episode. So, Chris, I'd love to dive in first for your martial art journey. Can you tell us more about where it begins and how do you suck in with it for all these years?
Well, it started when I was at the age of, I think it was between the age of like 5 and 6. My father had his own club at the time. And it was just one of those. I think I was quite a shy kid. Wasn't very confident as a young man. And not until later on, but I definitely put karate like as a reason for having more confidence. But it started at about 5, 6 years old at my father's club.
Is it something that you wanted to do, or this is something that your father think, the young Chris should go to come and train at the dojo?
I think it certainly looked it looked exciting, just like looked really awesome. And I think once I saw it, like I thought, I want to have a go at this, want to do it. And I would just say my journey as a young kid was very up and down with it. You could have some months you loved it, some months you didn't like it. I didn't really turn a corner with it. I really, really enjoyed it till I was about 17.
What is the training environment was like back then? Because I talked to a number of guests, they always say that not saying I'm using the word old days, right? But it's different than how we train right now. Can you think of a couple of examples to share, like what's in the old days training look like?
Oh, the trainings, like even for for myself, like back in the day, it was hard, but it's very, very rigorous, very basic. The Kihon was very basic, up and down the hall, up and down the hall. I wouldn't say, it probably wasn't as fun as probably what like myself and some of the other, instructors that I know, like try and incorporate into the class now. I think tough environment because the other kids there, especially being the instructor's son, always felt like there's maybe like a little bit of a target on your back and an expectation, a little bit of an expectation that you would be. Obviously, I'd looked up to my father, and he was good. So he maybe feeling a little bit of pressure there as well. But yeah, the young students, everybody was it was just hard. Everybody was hard and very committed, I would say.
Do you think it's just a mindset, or do you think, because back in the day we don't have YouTube, right? We might have VHS, but normally where we will get the technique or outside the dojo will be maybe a magazine, right? Maybe a VHS tape we can come up to. Versus now, if I go onto YouTube, I could search on any obscure technique. I could learn about it now.
Yeah, I mean, I certainly remember there's the martial arts magazine Fighting Arts, and my father used to sort of like uh, buy a bunch of those, and he'd sell those out to the because he knew Sensei Terry O'Neill. He produced the magazine,
Hmm.
um, and my father would buy like quite a few of those off him and sell them within the dojo and things. So there was always like those sort of like the Fighting Arts magazine around, but no, from what I remember, a lot of the old school instructors that when they went to the seminars and things, that they would take a diary with them and they'd write down like, what they learned that day and the techniques and everything like that. So I was just talking to my father about this the other day, and I think he was saying he's still got some old, training diaries somewhere.
Yeah, that's nice. It's always, carry to see what works or and what didn't, and you actually wrote it down. So it's interesting to see if you could share later on, on your show, what kind of technique that he thinks really works throughout the year. And, are there techniques that is being crossed out that doesn't is a no right now in the world that we live in?
Yeah, and again, those training diaries would obviously give you if you weren't, if you thought, "Oh, I haven't got anything planned this evening or anything like that for teaching, like you can just delve into those diaries, I guess, and look at some of the and get basic ideas for your class that you're going to teach, because I know from even talking to people now that keep a training diary and things that they'll say, "Oh yeah, I forgot about that sequence or those techniques," So then they'll then it's giving them an idea for teaching a class.
Mhm. The reason I wanted to reach out and speak to you is I read your piece. You are contributing writer for the Budo Mindset magazine. You actually wrote a piece about mentorship in karate. Can
Yes.
you talk to us about what you mean by that and how important do you think mentorship is in karate, in martial art in general?
Well, I think it's very important. I think having clear pathways for younger instructors to, um, if instructing is like a big focus of theirs and something that they really want to do, of like an association, having like a nice clear pathway for them to be guided and assisted by the senior instructors to make sure they're getting all, the best, I don't know, education, I guess, in for teaching and helping them find their own teaching style. Um, it's just something you don't see in certainly I haven't seen like in karate associations that they have like that, these like clear pathways. I mean, I certainly know the WTKO have that. Richard Amos's association, they have this like mentorship and leadership pathway. Um, the HDKI have a similar thing where they have like an internship. One of my good friends went and did that internship, and he took a lot away from that. Um, yeah, it's just, I mean, I've seen so many younger instructors that have got the enthusiasm and they're wanting to learn, they're wanting to progress more within association, but again, they sort of, I guess, reach a ceiling of, you've got the sort of older instructors, and they obviously want to they're keeping the younger ones sort of at bay or down.
Mhm.
Um, and yeah, I mean, people then get frustrated and probably either quit karate and just think,
Yeah.
"Oh, I'm not getting anywhere. That's it. I'm off." Or maybe, they go off and do their own thing, or maybe they then leave and go to another association, hoping for again maybe to find a pathway or an instructor that will assist them in what they're looking for.
Why do you think that is? Is it because the older generation are not available, or do you think the younger generation are not finding the way to seek out that mentor? Why do you think it
It,
it happens like right now?
it could be a number of things. I mean, maybe the cynic in me maybe would say it's a financial thing, that if the younger people are let through, then someone's got to relinquish like some, you know, finance, within that. Maybe if they, start doing a course and they're getting paid, or they're taking, someone's going to take lesser money. Again, that would be me just being cynical about it, I guess. There's a financial thing there. Maybe the older ones don't think that the younger ones are good enough, or maybe they're not doing it in a certain way.
Mhm.
There's, I think there's a lot of things that it could be. It's just I think there needs to be like like some sort of like happy medium, because I think give the younger instructors, give them a chance to try and prove themselves. And the older instructors are always going to be needed. You've got years of knowledge, years of knowledge and training there to guide the younger ones. So,
Mhm.
and again, a lot of the time, maybe the younger instructors, they're still young, they're fit, they're dynamic. When they are young as well, they've probably got lots of like new and fresh and innovative like ideas. You can still keep good standards, but like just I think it's just like giving people a chance. I mean, the amount of young people that I've seen leave associations, really, really good, talented people, you know, leaving associations, some never training really ever again, some just training on and off. There needs to be more of that, because otherwise if you've got people that are maybe right up there at sixth, seventh, eighth dans, and they're keeping the younger ones down, and then the younger ones have got to wait till they're maybe sort of in their 40s and 50s and maybe starting to get injuries and things like that. You want them to inspire like when they're young. Yeah, I think you want to see them inspiring people when they're younger.
I think that
Yeah.
sometimes the communication part may be throwing it into the mixture like personality clash.
Like, I've met like a lot of instructors that, immediately like you meet them and they're just, I don't know, you just get a good vibe from them. Like they're good. You're going to get good and bad people in all walks of life, and certainly in martial arts. And I think sometimes you get like instructors or high graded people that try and like sort of maybe like lord it over you a little bit, if that's the right way of putting it. You know, like as I am in life, in my everyday life, or in my working environment, or even in the dojo, if people are all right with me and I'm all right with them, like is I when I've got my dogi on, like I'll play the game, like if someone's treated me well, like us, I'll bow to them. And right, if they're you know arrogant and rude, then that might be a different story. But that's just me.
Mm. So, in your opinion, what does good mentorship in karate look like?
So, someone that listens, can guide, or like even knows when to listen. A lot of the instructors that I would say have always been good ones. That's probably maybe where me and Andy would like disagree a little bit. That I think I've been fortunate with. I've had like some good, I've been fortunate to be taught by some good instructors, and that have been good communicators. And I think, and it's the ones that that know have either worked you out, I guess, and they know how to get the best out of you.
Mhm.
Um, that would be really is like how to deal and read people, and then trying to work out sort of what it is they need.
So, what would be a difference between teaching karate and mentoring someone? Is it the level that goes deeper, or how would you separate the two?
Oh, I would definitely say like it would go like deeper, like probably in even myself, I would like even like more of a deeper understanding of karate. And I think it is there, like that deeper understanding, having things like working with people. I always think like it would have been nice to, yes, you have your gradings and you're going for your next belt, but even maybe like having some sort of along the way like a written test as well of like so making sure that you maybe remember the names of the techniques and things like this. I mean, I know you can do, some associations will have instructor exams, referee exams. That is obviously like, I guess that's like a little bit of a pathway, but it's more like maybe I would look at it almost like I'm an engineer by trade, right? So, um, like an apprenticeship in some way that like maybe an instructor takes you, they take you under your wing a little bit and they sort of teach you the way, they teach you the rules as it were, I guess.
Mhm. But in martial arts, I think if in order to be better, it's like a whole lifetime thing. So do you feel that in the world that we live in right now, we want things now and we want things in 30 days? That's why some of the people being mentored are feeling, oh, it's too long. I don't want it to really spend years
I
or
mean,
my lifetime to learn all this.
I mean, there could be that, but I mean, I think if you're like getting into karate, and then certainly by the time you would make it to Shodan, possibly. Well, I think the average is what, like usually like 4 years if you're
Mhm.
training
Yeah.
like constantly. I think you would have learned by then that it's definitely like a sort of like lifelong pursuit, and you're never going to get all the answers like straight away. I think you're right by saying that certainly in this day and age, like a lot of people want like faster results. And I think that's why as well with like trying to teach kids like these days is that the parents' expectation, the child's expectation, you know, social media's probably got to put a role to play there with short form videos and things like this. That the attention span is shorter, people, and then so the kids want to be, oh, what I want to be. When's the next ones have done one grade, and when's the next one? It's like, well, you need to learn. You need to learn all the moves and the kata first. Like it's the yes, I think it's that's where it's changed a lot from sort of when like I would have, when I would have started is that, you know, you knew you couldn't rush it, you knew it had to be right. Everybody wants everything a little bit too quicker these days.
So, in your view, it sounded like if an organization or a teacher has a more clear, defined pathway for the student, it's actually will be better than if you just go in vaguely, learn as you go. Is what you're seeing? Would you agree to that statement?
I mean, I think it's certainly good to have a sensei, or I think if you're lucky enough to have a sensei that you can rely on and talk to and look for turn to for guidance, and if you're struggling with anything in the dojo, or sometimes obviously even outside the dojo, I think that's good rather than sometimes stumbling along and trying to find your way. I mean, when we've had people come back to karate, and I try and help people as best as I can in that way. And but I think I can be quite good at recognizing like what people what motivates people and like what they need. I'd like to think that I can recognize that and then start to try and implement things like that to help that student or that person along along in their journey.
So what you're saying is, you have your curriculum, right? Your requirements to advance, but also you will look at the student themselves. If they need a certain type of needs, then you actually accommodate it, or maybe you teach the student to improve in the area that you think they could be better on.
Yeah, I mean, if we took my friend Sean, who's an instructor, and he's the chief instructor of our club now. And he's been on our podcast and told his story, and it is a redemption story in one sense that he was very talented young lad at a young age and did very well, and then and he's sort of like early sort of like we get into the teenage years and things, and it all started to probably go a little bit wrong for him, hanging around with the wrong people, doing the wrong things, ended up going to prison. I was in contact with him before, before he went to prison and things, and and you could just tell that like he needed the structure in his life, and that's where like I could see that I was always trying to get him back to training, because I thought if he has that structure of the training, the familiarity and the reliability of people, everybody in the dojo, and that purpose, it would get him back on the path. But it had to wait till he came out of prison, and then with a lot of constant nagging, he came back to training, and never looked back. Carried on training all the time. I helped him like get ready like for his third dan. He passed his third dan. That was like a massive thing for him to like get that passed. And karate is a part of who he is, I guess, and having it in his life gives him like meaning and purpose, I guess.
Thanks for showing that example. You probably give him a lot of positive impact, right? So hanging out with the right crowd, and then giving something you look forward in doing, and it I think routine can change a person, right? You go into bad routines, then you'll be going into the bad habits. And if you have good routines, then good things will come.
Yeah, humans, I think we thrive, like a majority of people thrive on routine, I would say. So, yeah, having that routine of the dojo and the ritual of in the dojo and everything like that, with the bowing and everything, I think, with like in his case, that is just like sort of what he needed.
Is this something that he realized after he came back, or is this something that you have to constantly remind him and kind of show him the way when he come back to train with you guys?
No, I think the hardest thing when you've got someone like anyone like that, or if you've had someone that's been out the dojo for a long time, it's the same either with the dojo, I guess, or people that go to the gym, or maybe have done some other activity. The hardest thing is getting through the door the first time again. Once they've got through that door, because whatever anxiety or I don't know, like thoughts they've got going through their head, once they've got over that initial step, you get the first session done. Okay, we'll see you next week, or see you at the next session. Cool, no worries. Maybe check in with them. Oh yeah, really looking forward to seeing the next session. Then when they're there at the next session, then is that one foot in front of the other. Once they start to gain momentum, then they're there. Then they're back training. They've got that continuity in their life as well, and that's it.
I really love that, like the way you explain it. So it's all mental, right? So a lot of time we,
I mean, I wouldn't look at myself as a mentor, right? I'd just say like I was a good friend, say, okay, I'd known Sean and his brother for since they were kids.
no, I mean in the mind, it's the mental thinking, right? So once they walk past the self talk, right? Because we always
it's all in the
talk
mind.
to ourselves. Yeah, we always talk to ourselves. I haven't been there for a long time. I don't want to go. But if you actually somehow, I don't know how, force you in while you're in the training, you actually forget all the self talk, right? You're in the moment, and if you are under good guidelines, then you get better.
Yeah, and especially if you like give them like a good hard session, haven't got much time to think about anything. They're thinking about like what they've got to do and things like that. An hour or an hour and a half session, like soon flies by, and it's just giving them like that bit of peace, even just for that bit of time.
So, in your opinion, what part of old school training should be preserved, and what part probably needs to change? You can take it anywhere you want.
Um, Certainly like the old school, like keeping the standards. Definitely got to keep the standards high. Don't compromise your standards. I think there has to be a toughness there sometimes, and I think especially you get young kids nowadays, like again, not all not all kids, but there's there can be ones that are not a lot of respect there, and that's the thing you get from parents saying, oh, I want to bring them to karate because it's all about the respect. And then sometimes if you talk, quite sort of firm with them, then they don't like it. But I think that is definitely part of karate. At times you need to be, that firmness and the standards from the old days is, yeah.
So, what are some of the things that probably needed to change?
And I'm sure Andy mentioned it in his podcast, and we talk about it quite regular on ours, and that's the sort of like the harder, faster, stronger, just train through injuries, don't worry about it, all that type of thing had to change, and again that's come with education of like body mechanics and things like that. We did a training session at the dojo on Monday, and my father and one of my old instructors was teaching at this session, and the other instructor, Phil, he was like, towards the end, he was just getting people to come out of the line, and he was like basically taking them a bit like boxing pads, I guess would be the best way I could describe it. But he's using the pads, getting them to use, obviously it's like karate techniques using the pads. And it was amazing how many of these sort of old school people old school guys and ladies that came to that session that had to tell him beforehand, no legs, no legs, because one, they've either had hip replacements, their knees are shot. So he was then, okay, no worries, I'll just adapt it to you. We'll just do hands only. So, the harder, faster, stronger, and training through injuries and all this sort of business from back in the day. Yeah, that had to change.
Yeah, I understand what you mean. And maybe that's why we're seeing people from the past are tough and stronger. Maybe some of them are able to withstand the abuse to the body better than others, because we all work during the day with our professional life, and you got to be able to show up to work the next day.
Yeah, I mean I would definitely say that was the thing that people just I mean, again, I was like a young kid when I started, in the 80s. I do remember that sort of seeing that thought pattern of where people obviously I think didn't care about they'd got to turn up to work the next day. That's how sort of hardcore some of some of it could be back then. But then obviously that started to creep in later on where, oh no, hang on a minute, I can't really turn up to work with a broken nose or black eye or broken, I don't know, busted ankle or whatever. It was people it started to change.
Now you are a father yourself. And so now being a father, does it also change the way that you teach karate?
Oh, I mean, yeah, definitely. Sometimes I can be a little bit soft on my kids, but then I'm also on the other way. I can be quite firm with them. I do like to try and keep, a standard, but again, yeah, and I suppose your own children. So I mean, with mine, I've got two boys. One is, maybe a little shy, it can be a little bit shy in confidence, where the younger one is like a bit of a whirlwind. So the dojo, it maybe depends what day it is, or what week it is. I always like to think that I was, reasonably a kind instructor and that, but sometimes then you have to know when to try and be maybe a little bit meaner to try and get the best out of people.
I think it's hard being a sensei. Not only you have to know all the technical skills for the arts that you're teaching, but a lot of time then people look up to you, right? You're supposed to know all the answer. A lot of time you don't. They look for you for emotional support, maybe sometime relationship guidance, right? Anything, you like a life coach sometime. So
yeah, I mean, I will always if I'm instructing things, I'm not, I don't claim to be, any sort of instructor really. I do my thing and try and do it as best to my ability. And if someone's got a question, I said, I'll answer it in my way and say, well, this is how I look at it. But I could, if it's a real technical question, we'll ask one of the other instructors. or I may ask one of the higher up instructors that I know if there's a question that I want answering. I'm not afraid to say I don't know. It's the same in my work life. As an engineer, someone will come to you with a question or something. Like, if I don't know, I'm not gonna, excuse my French, I'm not gonna bullshit them. like, like, um, you know, and that's I've seen so many people that will do that, and like you know, I just went, yeah. If I don't know, I will say I don't know.
Nice. And in your view, how would you hope your student to become beyond being good at karate for the skills that you teach them?
Yeah, I mean, like, you'll get people come through the dojo, and they're there. The amount of times, like, especially nowadays, like, seems to be like you're getting more and more kids that are either shy and quiet and things like, so just seeing kids like get out of their shell and become more confident. Like, usually you get like kids like they come to the dojo and might not make eye contact with you, or they might not really even speak to you that much, or they'll speak in a lower voice. You give that like a few weeks of like trying to encouraging them, and give it a couple of weeks, and then they're there talking to you. Give it a little bit longer, that they can look you in the eye, and have a conversation with you. That's what I like to see, mostly, really. Is just just seeing people, just seeing kids, adults, just seeing people like progress and just doing better, bettering themselves.
So you would
And
agree that, with the right type of karate training, it can make someone a better person outside of the dojo.
oh, like, yeah, 100%, yeah, like, definitely, definitely. You'll be fortunate to get a student every now and again that just either picks it up really quickly, and then eventually goes on and they do really well at competition or something like that. You'll get, but that's not like, you're not always like every student, that might go on and then either go and represent their country even. we when we used to be with the previous club that we used to belong to. I mean, there was a young lad who used to train with us, and God, like, I didn't know what to do with this kid at one time of day. He was just, look back now, and he was just a typical like young teenager, and he was just finding his way in the world, I guess. But I remember saying to him, like, "Do you really want in adventure?" I was like, "Do you really want to be here? Because it just seems like you don't." That was the vibe that you got all the time. And he's like, "No, no, I definitely want to be here." And then, trying all different ways to get in, to engage this young lad. And, I think it was he probably, when he turned like 14, 15, I think he maybe have been like, the penny just seemed to drop with him. And then next thing, there was like the kime was there, the power was there. Um, he was wanting to learn more, asking questions, and you know, he wanted to train more like with the adults, to like be pushed on for like kumite and things like this. And he's like gone on to like is now representing England in the association that they're in. You know, it's unfortunate, like, when we left and everything, like, when me and the guys left the old club, that it went a bit sour. But we still see this young guy and say hello to him and things like that. And he's like doing so well, and you can, and he's just like a good, good young lad, and there's no doubt karate has played a massive part uh, in his life and helped him along that path. And you look at that and you just think that's the prime example.
Yeah, that's an incredible story. And I think while you're talking, it's kind of like when you attend a school can be somewhat flexible, but then you have to live within certain type of rules. But in the dojo, we do have the standard, but as a good sensor, a good mentor can actually open up more door for people who seemingly be difficult at the time. Maybe him or her, it just needs to experiment in a different way. Maybe being talked to in a different way, or maybe being treated or trained in a different way. And then they will figure out themselves. You are in a way mentoring that person, when they didn't want to
Yeah,
be that.
yeah, yeah. I'd agree with that. Sometimes, like we've had a lot. I'm like, I'm not really I'm not making a break. So, sometimes if you're lucky enough to have a few more instructors within your dojo, like we can, well, the higher grades talk to one another, within the club, and maybe if I've reached like a point where I'm like, I'm just not like making any headway with this like student, and then the other student, I was like, oh, maybe they're like, you know, learn a little bit more from you, Andy, say, or Sean, or whoever it may be, and they have a bit of a crack at like seeing like if they can get them motivated and get them going, and then that it'll work. That whatever it is that they bring to the table is just different than what I did. And I can, you can accept that. Okay, I couldn't for whatever reason couldn't get through to that student, but one of the others did.
Yeah, sometimes I think it's personality, right? Sometimes they are looking for a stronger figure, and sometimes they want the emotional connection, right? Or sometimes they just being wanted a good listener, right? So
Yeah.
we all have our own personality, and you're right for doing that. Maybe at the time they didn't respond to your instruction. Maybe have other to talk to them, try to get them open up.
Yeah, it's like good cop, bad cop, isn't it? It's as well. And do you know what? Like I think the first time I had to like basically be like bad cop, I just couldn't deal with it. I was like, I'm not bad cop. I'm the good one. And I found that really hard to deal with, start off with. But as you get along, you're like, yeah, well, it was necessary. That was, that student is now like, doing awesome. And, you couldn't be any more prouder of them.
Let's talk about the UK Karate Podcast. How did you originally get the idea and wanted to be a podcast host?
Oh God, I wouldn't even say like if I ever thought I was going to be a podcast. If I remember when podcasting sort of like first came on my radar, I was like, "What's this all about?" I was intrigued by it. I was intrigued by it all a bit, but then it's sort of like, well, okay, well, I'm an engineer by trade. Could we do something on? Is there any way of like doing something on that? I thought, well, yeah, there is, but maybe I just it didn't seem to spark my interest as much as like the karate, and it was sort of I think over the COVID times when we're on, I was fortunate I wasn't like locked down. I think like in the house for too long, it's probably like 3 weeks. But the 3 weeks that I did have off, and even in between that time when I was back at work, that was I'd always had an idea that I wanted to speak to. I guess if you were like interview, I guess, but I just wanted to speak to and record a conversation or conversations with the instructors that had inspired me. I'd got no sort of like grand ideas of like speaking to like half the guests that we're speaking to like now. I just wanted to speak to the instructors that inspired me, and basically just have that as like, that's a record of these people, like it doesn't always have to be about like the bigger named senseis or the big superstar senseis you might see online and things like that. I've got big names for competition, and all these people I wanted to speak to, they did well, and they did well, at a very competitive time at karate, sort of like in the 80s and 90s. And I was just wanting to do that. It was born from there, really.
Mhm. So, how do you think, after speaking to so many guests who are on the podcast, changed the way you think about your own training and teaching?
Oh, training and I don't teach training and teaching. I mean, with some of the people we've had on the podcast, I've been very fortunate to like be on their seminars and things like that. And again, you see the way they interact with people and how they get the best out of people. So you're probably everyone in karate is usually always like pinching little ideas off one another. So if there's something that you see someone do and you think, oh, I'll try that and see if that works, because that's like worked on me if I've been in their class. So yeah, it's really, I would just say it's like maybe stealing a few ideas, like here and there for my own purposes.
Can you share one example, things like idea or like a thinking that you learned that actually helped you a lot in your own training?
We had Sensei Matt Price come and teach a course with. So like Sensei Matt was very known, obviously, for being he was a fierce competitor, and it was just looking at his like training methods, like what he has, and his like the movement. So things like from him, it would be about like movement, and also like he shared on the podcast about he had this made this basically like a persona where like he was just would like he looked so mean and aggressive that he like already like psychologically would break like his opponents before they'd even got on the mat. So, not that I was like looking to emulate that, but certainly from his teaching, like when he taught for us, was like movement. There'd be someone like Sensei John O'Neill from Liverpool. Um, he did like a great class and like incorporated lots of sweeps and takedowns. And he was like, I was, should I say, unfortunate to be the uki that day. So I was being, I was, I got, I'm like 6'3", and I used to like using ashibarai and sweeping people, and like I'd never like been swept so many different ways than he was sweeping me that day. Like so again, learning all different sweeping techniques. Um, yeah, it's so hard to like pinpoint it down to like one thing. It'll be like quite a few things, really.
That would be a good teaser for listener who are interested in finding out more. Listen to all the episodes. Maybe you can pick one that, resonate with you.
Yeah, I mean it's yeah, and don't be afraid to like go on like on different seminars and try and go and like seek like other knowledge. I'd say don't stay totally confined to your just your association. I think that's like again this karate without borders that gets mentioned a lot. I know Stuart Amos and so like pretty much coined that saying, but it is a good saying. I just think don't be confined by your own association's walls. There's more out there than just your association. Keep an open mind. Train with everybody. That's what I would say. Train with anyone and everyone that you want to.
Nice. So, Chris, for a listener who wanted to reach out to learn more about you and the UK Karate Podcast, what's the best way to reach out to you?
You can reach out to us on social media, on Instagram, on Facebook. We just recently the website's just gone up, so that's at www.ukkaratepodcast.co.uk. All the podcasts are on there. You can link to Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube on there, loads of videos on there as well. And if people are interested about, wanting to come on the podcast, we now have like a guest intake form and everything on there as well. So yeah, the website is probably the main one to go through now, really.
Nice. I'll put that on the show note. And Chris, thank you so much for coming on to the show today. I had a fun time speaking with you.
I have a question for you, Swire.
Okay.
Do you enjoy training like out of like I would say your bubble that you would train with?
I always do. I always like to cross training, and I actually, from me, I learn new things and I go back to my own basics, and I always discover new things to it. Why do you ask me that question?
No, it was just because like again, some pits you'd be amazed at like how a lot of there's a lot of karateka out there that just won't train out of their from their own umbrella of their association.
Mhm.
It's it is quite stigmatized within some associations, and I
Yeah,
think
I,
it's
I,
just
I
about
do. My Sensei Tayaponte, he actually trained in karate and he trained in Kobudo, Judo, Jiu-Jitsu, Wing Chun, Chinese Kung Fu. So like our whole thing is about branching out to see what works, and we incorporate. And a lot of time, what he does is cross train and showing what works in a certain style. Then doesn't matter if you incorporate and it works for you for your body type, then it's yours to keep.
And my other one would be was what spurred you on to start your podcast?
I love to talk to more people and to discover their way of training. And I ask them, really, is my question that I think sometimes we're too shy to ask. Then I actually go onto the record and ask people those questions. And it kind of resonate with certain people because, there are questions that maybe you feel shy, stupid to ask, but I just ask away.
Yeah, then that's the best way is just ask away. You've got to ask. If you do not ask, you will not know.
Yeah, thank you so much, Chris. I, enjoy for, the surprise question and hope I answered the way that, it's supposed to be.
And we will. We'll have to get you. We'll have to get you on our podcast. We've been recording like crazy recently. We're trying to I think we've almost got enough episodes to do us all the way up to Christmas now. So
Nice.
that's already. So yeah, we've been on it this year.
All right. So take care and thanks for coming on today.
Thank you so much, Swire. You take care. Thank you.